on a daily basis. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization and its goal of protecting peace, prosperity, and security is not something that's in the top of most Canadians' minds most of the time. Today, that may be changing, though, with what's going on in Ukraine, and it's an important thorn in the brain to remind people that this is an organization that is extremely important to our way of life. It's integral to the foundations of our cultural flourishing, our everyday way of life. The principle that an attack upon one is an attack upon all is the foundation of NATO and maintains peace through strength. This was a very hard-won lesson from the death and destruction of the Second World War. And our alliance is now 30 strong, Canada and 29 allies, including Hungary. And we're going to have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Hungary to Canada, in just a few moments. But I think it's so important for Canadians to remember that this collective defense draws its strength through unity, and that unity should not be taken for granted. The security itself that it provides should not be taken for granted. And the more that we get this into our very bones, the more we'll be able to have a sensible and very sober foreign policy. And of course, the unity that requires makes the current situation with Russia on the borders of Ukraine a challenge to NATO. And every time that we have to deal with issues as a group of democratic nations, of course, there are always going to be differences. But today we're going to be concentrating more or less on the unities and the similarities and the connections between Hungary and Canada. Before I introduce our two moderators, I would like to just encourage everyone who's watching to engage with the NATO Association as part of our community online via Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. And of course, here on YouTube, please do subscribe if you haven't already. We want to keep this conversation going and maintain Canadians' awareness of the importance of being involved in the world and what's going on around us. With that, I'd now like to introduce Thea Vasha and Chanel McDermott, two of our outstanding program editors at the NATO Association. Thea, Chanel, please take it away and introduce Her Excellency.
Thank you, Robert. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our series of events discussing the future of North Atlantic cooperation. My name is Thea Vasha, and I'm a program editor at the NATO Association of Canada.
And my name is Chanel McDermott. I am also a program editor at the NATO Association of Canada. In these trying times, it is more important than ever to promote international cooperation.
We are honored to be joined by Her Excellency Mária Vass-Salazar, Ambassador of Hungary to Canada. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador. Her Excellency became the Ambassador of Hungary to Canada in 2020. Prior to her appointment, she held various positions, such as Head of Department for Northern Europe at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Hungary, Deputy Head of Mission at the Hungarian Embassy in London from 2011 to 2016, and Transatlantic Diplomatic Fellow at the Office of European Union and Regional Affairs at the Hungarian Embassy in Washington from 2008 to 2009. Ambassador Vass-Salazar has also played a crucial role in Hungary's accession to NATO, as she served as desk officer for Atlantic Cooperation from 1997 to 1998 and head of section for NATO Affairs from 2002 to 2004, receiving a medal for advancing Hungary's accession to NATO. The ambassador holds a master's degree in history from Eötvös Loránd University and completed her PhD in international relations from Cornelius University of Budapest. Now, without further ado, Ambassador, we would like to invite you to begin with some opening remarks.
Well, thank you very much for this introduction, and Robert, thank you so much for inviting me. This is a tremendous honor and a great opportunity for me to engage with you, to talk to you, and I truly appreciate your mission here and also your organization. And as just picking up what you said in your introductory remarks, I truly believe, and I'm speaking out of experience, how important it is to reach out to the public and raise the awareness of the importance of NATO and the importance of all the values that NATO carries and the significance in our security. And it's especially in easier times, it's not so obvious as you pointed it out. So maintaining an understanding and a public support is a tremendous task, and it's in all of our interests to actually uphold its understanding in the wider public. And as you also said, that in challenging times, when NATO really gets and comes together and the allies really reunite in their efforts to address issues of common concern, that's where we really see firsthand how important it is and how essential for our own security and prosperity and the future that NATO carries and holds for all of us. And referring to Tia's kind introduction, let me highlight at the beginning how incredibly rewarding it for me personally in my career to work at the Hungarian delegation to NATO 20 some years ago when Hungary joined the alliance in 1999 and even before, and how tremendously valuable was it for us, all of us, the Poles, the Czechs, and the Hungarians who joined in the first round of NATO accession or expansion, how rewarding it was for us to work with allies like Canada. And I cherish the memory of that cooperation and the outreach and the assistance that we got. After actually this year, it will be 25 years ago since Hungary and Czech Republic and Poland was invited, and as it happens, the summit in the summer in 2022 will be in Madrid, and in 1997 it was also a summit in Madrid where the alliance made a decision to invite Hungary and the other two countries to join NATO. So for us, it's also a symbolic and an important milestone and also a reminder of the significance of the alliance for transatlantic security, for European security. And it has never wavered ever since. That the issues change, the challenges change, but the significant, the overarching significance of the alliance and of all of us who contribute to the success of the alliance is the same, and it's as strong as ever. In the introduction, if I may also just highlight how honored I am and privileged to serve as a Hungarian diplomat and as ambassador for the first time in my 24-year-long career in Canada, because Canada has a special place in the hearts of Hungarians. If I can be a little bit personal about it, Canada has a very positive image in Hungary. I have experienced it ever since I was a child because of the connection, because of the historic connection, and because of the many Hungarians who actually settled here, in particular after our revolution in 1956 was crushed. And the embrace that Canada provided to the nearly 40,000 Hungarians who started their new life here was very meaningful, and it created this special bond. Even those difficult years, very difficult. I mean, Hungary, the dictatorship, communism was very strict, very difficult time for our parents' generation, and my generation also got a taste of it in our childhood. But even in those circumstances, know that we have relatives, friends of friends, acquaintances in Canada, kept our hope stronger for a future change. And I noted, again, I'm speaking out of experience, how important it was for all of us. And then after the changes in Hungary, when we regained our freedom and we restarted our whole international engagements after 89 and 1990, we felt strongly the help that we received from countries like Canada. And also, if I get closer to my first professional experience with NATO, and after our invitation, the United States and Canada were absolutely in the front. So in the first line of outreach and help. And we will never forget that. And also in the process as well, I mean, Canada was, one of the first countries to ratify our accession protocols. That was not just a symbolic gesture. It really meant this anchor in our relationship that was essential for us. And ever since, we have built a very close bilateral relationship that is based on a lot of segments. The Hungarian community here in Canada is an essential element in this. And the bridge or the bond that it created and maintained, it's very important for both countries, actually. For us, of course, it's an essential link, but I would say for Canada too, because the contribution that the Hungarians have made to the development of Canada is tremendous. And I hear it from Canadians. So that's why I dare to say it without wanting to sound immodest in any ways. But that's what I experience ever since I speak with Canadians, that they appreciate that the Hungarian, they know, the Hungarian people they know, the Hungarian companies or experience they have. And that also means a lot to the relationship. And also in terms of working together for common goals, and also outside of the alliance, and of course Hungary as a member of the European Union brings also value to this relationship. And if you look at our region, Central Europe, which is quite a distinct region within Europe or within the European Union. And we have a very informal but well-functioning network, the so-called Visegrad 4, which is 4 countries in Central Europe: Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary. And this group has been in this regional cooperation for 30 years now, and I strongly believe that Canada has a lot of objectives or issues that would be essential to discuss with this group, and also we have mutual interests, and also in terms of business and trade relations. This is an area where I think Canada should look at, especially when it needs to diversify its trade relations and have a stronger engagement overseas, let me put it this way. And so Hungary is a key partner, I would say, and I would like to work on this direction also to strengthen these aspects of our relationship, to foster business and trade relationship between Canada and Hungary, between Canada and Central Europe, and of course between Canada and the European Union. And if I may just highlight maybe one more aspect in the introduction, which is also a personal priority for me. Before I covered Northern Europe in the Foreign Ministry, I was for a short while head of the Science Diplomacy Department, the mandate of which was to promote international partnerships in innovation and technology. And during those 2 years, it wasn't a long time, but I had this glimpse, which was quite an important experience for me. And also I learned the actual value and significance of this area, technology research, and also the application of the results of research and development into industry and businesses and commerce. So the commercial aspects of it. How essentially important is, in particular now, it's even before the pandemic, we had the key to competitiveness, and not just to strengthen competitiveness, even just to keep up, to maintain competitiveness, was digital transformation and the success of digital transformation. And not just for the larger companies, but small and medium-sized companies. They would lag behind if they don't embark on this path. So much that not just they suffer, but countries like Canada and Hungary, where SMEs are the backbone of the economy. It would have a pretty large effect and not in a positive sense if these companies lag behind in digital transformation. So with this goal, we really focused on how to do this, how to facilitate this process more effectively. I mean, we looked at international models like, applied in the United States or Israel, actually were very, very important, but also useful for us. And I would like to explore cooperation between Canada and Hungary in this field too, because I noticed that here the approach is very similar to what we embarked on to facilitate the academia, so the research universities and research institutes, their results, their cooperation on the business demands, I mean, the requirements that industry has, and the government come in to facilitate the whole process. So this knowledge triangle to be able to work, the government, the public sector needs to get in the game, and so to provide more incentives and tools that would facilitate this process. And I'm very, very proud to see that the 5 super clusters established in Canada in the completely similar way than what we did in Hungary 5-6 years ago. One of them is headed by a Hungarian, originally Hungarian, Linda Hasenfratz, who is also the CEO of the largest company, Canadian company, who invested in Hungary, Linamar. It's a manufacturing company, but we are very proud that the founder, who just passed away actually recently, I attended his memorial and funeral just a week ago. He came over to Canada after the revolution in 1956 was crushed, and he had nothing, zero. He had the $5 that he got after landing in Canada, and from that $5 he created absolutely on his own this over $7 billion worth company that employs 26,000 people. So this is one of those stories that as emblematic or signifies the personal elements of connections that Hungary and Canada has, and the significance in terms of the future as well. I would probably stop here. I could go on and on and on, because I'm very passionate, not just about my profession, but about building meaningful relationship and cooperation between Canada and Hungary. But I would be very much interested in also a discussion and engaging in a question and answers. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Ambassador, for your wonderful opening remarks. And now we're going to proceed to a moderated discussion before we open the floor to questions from our live audience. So as you mentioned in your opening remarks, Canada and Hungary's bilateral relation has a strong historical foundation, as Canada resettled nearly 38,000 Hungarian refugees fleeing the Soviet invasion following the 1956 Hungarian Revolution. And the decades that followed have been characterized by close relations forged by economic ties between the two countries. And how would you characterize this bilateral bond today? Further characterize?
Yes, well, going back to the Hungarian community here, and also to the fact that actually the first Hungarians who settled here in Canada came to this country in the 1880s, and so it has, I would say, a historic, deeply rooted. It created a historic and deeply rooted connections between Hungarians and Canadians, and I had the privilege to actually visit the region, the area. It is in Saskatchewan, where they first, that we have record of. Maybe they came even earlier, but we have records of Hungarians settling in Saskatchewan in 1880, and also in Alberta a little bit later in the 1890s. And there are towns that carry Hungarian names that were founded, established by these people, and also churches all over the country, and in many religious denominations. So it's really Hungarians. I'm sure like all other communities that came to Canada, but really made a mark, a positive historic mark, and the heritage they pass on to the future. I mean, the current generations and the future generations is truly valuable, and it's important for us, and it's appreciated locally. And so, of course, beyond these early Hungarians, the big wave, I would say, which is of course a tragedy for Hungary, but after the revolution, as you pointed out, was crushed in Hungary, and there was a window in time, until the early 1957, in the beginning of the year, when Hungarians could leave, and 200,000 people left, and they had to leave because their life was in danger, their families had, suffered, and also just they had to flee after the really almost in today's terms, almost incomprehensible how brutal that dictatorship was, how murdering people and imprisoning people for political reasons were just the full-fledged repercussions after Hungarians tried to break out of the grip of communism, and although for a short while it seemed that we could actually manage to break free, get independence, but it's very, very nearly, very, very shortly after that, when there was basically no international support, the Soviet Union just roamed in with tanks, literally, in the streets of Budapest, and crushed any hope for change. But ever since, as I said, this created a special bond. And today there are roughly 350,000 Canadians who have Hungarian background, and that's data from the last census. So I'm curious, I will be very curious after the current census, how many people will claim Hungarian ethnic background. But it is a almost like the value of it cannot be even described, how important this special bond is, and also the Hungarians who are prominent. I mean, the Canadian Hungarians who are really outstanding among, of course, Canadians. Is just to mention a few. Peter Monk, the late Peter Monk, was of course a very successful businessman and also a philanthrope. A lot of buildings in Toronto carry his name for a good reason. He gave back to the society tremendously. Or if we go to the creative industries, Robert Lantos, in Hungarian we would say Lantos, the prominent filmmaker, producer, is also, he and his family left Hungary after 1956, Frank Hasenfratz, as I mentioned to you, the late Frank Hasenfratz, but there are many others. Just going back to Toronto, the president and CEO of the Royal Conservatory, Peter Simon, is of Hungarian background, and I'm very, very pleased to discover that in the federal parliament there are 3 wonderful politicians, truly great minds who have Hungarian backgrounds. So I'm building our partnership with them too, and also in the Senate. So I'm trying to tap into this treasure chest, because this is what gives our work and of course the official contacts and the official relationship, the human and the people to people element, which is so important. And this would have such a wide implication. I mean, beyond, of course, I would like to, of course, foster more high-level contacts and more business contacts, more trade, more investment, more political cooperation, but the wider, the people-to-people cooperation and also the engagement is, I think, would also be tremendously valuable and important to bring closer the two countries even closer. And I also have a goal. This is a small thing, but I think would carry a lot of impact to foster the establishment of city partnerships. There are so many common grounds where this could be established, and of course beyond that, in university to university, that's been going on actually quite nicely. But the ambition is, of course, to expand even wider. There's so much we can learn from each other. We can give to each other. So the special bond, just to go back to the question, I think it's tremendously valuable, and the impact and the opportunities that it carries for even a wider engagement is very important. So I would like to cultivate that and build on that in my term as ambassador, and I hope that soon I will be able to do this more and more in person, because there is nothing that would be as efficient or as engaging as meeting people in person.
Thank you so much for your insightful answer, Ambassador. And speaking of our bilateral bond, our countries enjoy a significant economic relationship, sitting in the $910.7 million in two-way trade at the end of 2020. How would you describe the impact of COVID-19 on our trade relations, and what do you think that can be done in the future to better manage such shocks?
Thank you for the question. And but let me start by saying that we are very, very proud that the bilateral trade has been actually growing before COVID, or were growing before COVID quite significantly. And just the year before the pandemic started in 2019, we reached reached over $1 billion Canadian dollars, the bilateral trade. And compared to that, first of all, that was quite a milestone. But compared to that, the little over 100,000 is a setback. But relatively speaking, compared to other countries and other trading relations, it was a minor. I mean, compared to, let's say, countries in Hungary's region. And we are very pleased to see that. And of course, it gives us hope that we can actually get back to the 2019 level soon. Let's say the target is by next year. And there is an upward trajectory as we see the results already for 2021 and the first signs, projections for next year. Obviously, the pandemic and the economic impact of the pandemic was devastating for every country, and we all, like Canada did, Hungary, put in place a lot of measures to save the economy, to help businesses get through this tremendously difficult time. And of course, there was a very complex management of healthcare, and of course, the number one and number second and third priority obviously was the well-being of the people. But to measure what we do in order to save lives and to maintain a workable, a functioning healthcare system, as well as how to salvage the economy. It's very all the countries had to grapple with this difficulty, and we did so too. And there were a lot of measures put in place in Hungary that would actually that had helped or facilitated a moderate loss. Our economy, our setback in 2020, the hardest year, was just GDP growth was minus 4.7, so not so tremendously low. And also, as I said, with Canada, the trade didn't fall back. It was a 9% fallback, which is manageable. And also, I'm very, very pleased to say that, again, in our region, so in Central Europe, Hungary has the largest investment from Canada, investment portfolio. And so that also gave us a really solid background, because there are quite a number of Canadian companies already present in Hungary, and their position is very solid. And even during the pandemic, all the companies, even the larger companies, suffered a lot. And so the Hungarian government put in place special tailored measures, actually packages of measures for investor companies to keep the employment level as high as possible. There were subsidies for the companies to do that, but also we had this creative idea, I would say, not being an economist, but I think it was actually quite smart, that to encourage further investment or expansions of investment, the government provided for companies who committed to expand their investment cash grants and tax credits, and even training, special incentives for employing and training people. So there was a scheme, and it was very popular actually, because it makes sense. So this was an investment from the government's part, but it helped the companies stay on their feet, but also to employ people and not to let go, not to this phase, which is a phase, the pandemic, we just couldn't know at the beginning how long it will be, to sort of bridge that. And it made the situation, the economic situation, and for the investor companies also, relatively speaking, easier among the difficulties of the pandemic. So that would, I believe, give us good reason for an optimistic, cautiously and responsibly optimistic projection that we will continue on this path of strengthening our economic relationship, trade, bilateral trade, as well as investment, and the feedback that we receive from Canadian companies. And I mentioned Linamar, they are there, but there is also CAE, Bombardier, even Magna is in Hungary, and we would like Magna to be further expand its investment, but Linamar has grown. They had several waves of investment, and it's a wonderful, valuable company. We truly value their presence in Hungary. But Vermilion Energy from Alberta, and so we encourage also others to see Hungary as a great place to do business, to invest, and in general, even COVID aside, the business environment is very much created in a way that would attract investments. So the predictability, the stability of the country, as well as the business environments, and also the incentives that the government can actually provide, and also the fact that Hungary is in the European Union, so the access to the market is a clear value, and our geographic location is also an attractive feature. We are literally in the middle of Europe, geographically speaking, and also the infrastructure is developed enough so that the access to not just to Central Europe, but to the 510 million strong EU market, as well as the Eastern European or Southeastern European markets, are very easy from Hungary. So and then we have the skilled labor force and the adaptability. The fast adaptability to the requirements of any larger companies that would like to invest in Hungary and do business and production and high tech. And if I may just also include this in the business and also the future, if we talk about how we can strengthen further the business relationship between Canada and Hungary, it's the high tech sector that is also a very strong pull sector, if I can put it this way. And we have already in the last decade or so, the service sector is very highly developed, and there is a lot of investment actually in that field, but also top research facilities are in Hungary. Research and in the wider sense, high-tech facilities. Just give you two examples. We have the largest automated vehicles test track in Hungary, in the western part of the country, and that's why it's called Zala, because that's the region, and it's called Zala Zone to make it a little bit more automotive sounding, and it's truly there is it's up and running, and it's possible to test not just automated vehicles but also connected vehicles, and it's all running in 5G, and also there is a RDI center right next to it to service all the tests that any company or countries would like to carry out there, and that's also a great opportunity for Canadian businesses. We actually just had a few months ago a very rewarding and targeted discussion here in Canada with interested stakeholders in how to engage, how to promote partnerships using that test track. And another facility is a laser research facility, which is even, I would say today, currently the top level laser research is the attosecond laser beams that this facility can provide, which is like, I mean, I'm also a layman, but I don't know how many times you can go around the world in an attosecond. So it's the precision that it's even stronger than a regular laser beam, and that has a very wide area of application, from medical research to space and all kinds of industries and fields of research. And it's possible to actually go to Hungary and pursue these sort of partnerships. So technology, RDI, and innovation is the key area also as we come out of the pandemic and as we build our business partnerships. And also just directly related to the pandemic, it's of course medical technology and biotechnology, and that has been traditionally strong in Hungary. And I think an important lesson from this pandemic is that we really need to focus more efforts and activities on creating the ability and strengthening the ability for a quicker response in case there's another challenge of this sort, which is probably unavoidable, occurs, and to shorten the time from the occurrence of any sort of medical challenge and pandemic or virus or any kind of medical related global challenge, to shorten the time from the discovery to the treatment or to the addressing of the challenge. And I think this is something that all the countries now focus on. And if I can insert just one more thought, and the Hungarian proud moment here too, the development in Pfizer-BioNTech of the mRNA vaccine, that the fundamental of that was actually developed by a Hungarian biochemist named Katalin Karikó. I'm sorry to say it was in the United States that she actually worked on this, but nevertheless, she's Hungarian. We are very proud of her.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I mean, to discuss the foundations of this prosperity, which is the security dimension of international cooperation. You mentioned that, we are approaching the 25th anniversary. Hungary joined NATO more than 2 decades ago now, and your efforts in the accession were fundamental. How would you describe Hungary's contributions to NATO over the years, and how do you expect this alliance to progress?
Well, thank you very much. This is a topic that's really close to my heart, although this is hard security, but still, and not just because I met my husband at NATO, but also it's truly a historic moment was for Hungary, the accession, and also what came after. And I have to say that even before joining NATO, Hungary has contributed significantly to the efforts of the alliance. If you go back to the early and mid 1990s, the crisis in the Balkans, in particular, the war in Bosnia was a challenge to European and transatlantic security. And we have already, even before joining NATO, contributed to the efforts to bring stability and security to the Balkans and the Western Balkans. And so after we joined, in 1999, that's when the ratification process concluded, and actually the March 12th is the anniversary, and just 12 days later, the alliance started its air campaign to stop the ethnic cleansing in Kosovo. And so that was quite a challenge and also a serious situation for a country. Obviously we were, and the other two new members were affected by this crisis greatly, but mostly Hungary, given the fact that we are a neighboring country. And of course, we wanted to be very responsible in the way how we contribute to the alliance's efforts. And I would say that sort of test was we passed with flying colors, if I can put it this way. Again, I don't want to sound immodest, but I remember the days when we were all there and how to be made sure that the decisions and the input that we provide, and also the decision making and strengthening the cohesion and the consensus in the alliance was upheld, and it was. And but ever since, we have been contributing to the missions of NATO, as I said, both in Bosnia at the beginning. Now Bosnia, of course, the mission there is handled by the EU. We are there too, continuously. So Hungary has actively contributed to the security goals of the alliance, and in the wider sense, European security structures, but also in Kosovo and in KFOR, we are still there with a strong contingent, nearly 500 people. I mean, for Hungary, we are a country of not quite 10 million people, so it's to put in a context or perspective. And so, and KFOR, the commander, is currently a Hungarian. So that is an important area for us to make sure that we do our utmost to make a meaningful contribution to the alliance's efforts. And we have been in Afghanistan, so I've going on to highlight our contributions to NATO mission. I mean, the alliance's military operations, and we were in Afghanistan for 2 decades actually. So we contributed to the joint efforts, both at the beginning, ISAF and then RSM. But also we were leading a provincial reconstruction team in Afghanistan for quite some time now. And with the help of the Hungarian management of this province, basically, we have rebuilt numerous infrastructure, important like schools, hospitals, and roads. I mean, basic infrastructures, while we contributed to security and the safety of that region in close, obviously, coordination with the alliance. And recently, when we all withdrew, of course, joint decision by NATO, we had to evacuate. We did over 550 people, including those Afghans that assisted the Hungarian troops and the provincial reconstruction team members. And also we are still in Iraq in the training mission. We have been there also with the coalition as well as with NATO. And so basically what I would like to highlight, that ever since we joined 23 years ago, officially, we have been part of the efforts for more, basically, since we were invited. We made sure that even those difficult years when Hungary didn't have the economic solid background. I mean, we had to go through 2 very difficult phases, one right after the change of the regime, and then, of course, around the crisis in 2008 and 2009. But we made sure that our commitment to the alliance's efforts is unwavering, and we have for a long time, even today, nearly 1,000 troops always in mission. And that's quite a commitment for a country like Hungary, and that's been constant. And I also had the very rewarding experience of hearing from our allied partners about the Hungarian military and the troops on the ground, who serve together with Hungarians, and frankly, it meant a lot that I got the feedback, I and many other Hungarian officials, how tremendously valuable the Hungarian troops were, and how highly skilled and incredibly disciplined and very, very professional and easy to cooperate with. And that means a lot, especially when I saw how we started, when we the whole rearrangement of the Hungarian military forces took place in the 1990s, and I saw some of the training facilities in Hungary in the 1990s, and those soldiers, those military, both officers and people on the ground were very dedicated, and it means a lot that their reputation, even in the front line, so to speak, when they are out on the mission, is very positive. And besides, of course, the missions and contributions to the actual operations at NATO, the Hungarian contribution to alliance's efforts, both in terms of the political decision making, as well as the improvements of our military and defense structures, have been a priority. And let me highlight that the current and most robust modernization of the Hungarian defense structure and military is very meaningful, very deep, and we already see the results. It's not just about lots of procurements, of course, but there is a lot of high technology aspects of it, and there is a commitment to implement, to fulfill this project by 2016, where the results will be a absolutely 21st century modern defense forces. And there is also in Canada, we have several, but in particular, and it's and now it was announced last year that Rheinmetall Canada, Rheinmetall, of course, being a German company, but the Canadian company of this large defense industry company has takes part in this large modernization program in Hungary. So there is a connection there too. And also the budget, the famous 2%, and Hungary is committed to actually reach the 2% of GDP in terms of the defense expenditure by 2024, and then the pandemic didn't change that. So we are on the right track, and we will reach that goal. And we already reached the other leg of that goal, that 20% of the defense budget is dedicated to procurement and modernization of the equipment. So I'm very proud, especially someone who has seen the beginning and see the difficulties which we all had. I mean, not just Hungary, all the other countries, we had a very different path, not because of our choice, but because we had to, and so that now this modernization is truly meaningful.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for that insightful answer. We do have one quick question before moving on to our live Q&A. Going back to the Canada-Hungary relations, what do you think that Hungary and Canada can do to work together to advance the rule-based international order around the world?
Well, I think we are already doing that, but I think it's the strengthening of multilateral institutions, and of course for us, and also in the context of this session, NATO is the utmost in terms of security, and that's the cornerstone. That's the cornerstone for us. But of course, if you look at the wider area and the United Nations clearly the epitome of multilateralism, and that's also we have a good track record of collaborating with Canada. Hungary supported Canada's candidacy for the Security Council membership in 2020 wholeheartedly. We're sorry that it didn't work out the way, but that's what I said to my Canadian partners, that on the goals that Canada identified during the campaign, we would be absolutely thrilled to collaborate, to see how we can work together to make an impact. And as someone who had worked in multilateral environments, I know exactly how important it is to engage and to join our efforts to address challenges, not just security, but like climate change. That's also it has so many implications in so many fields of our lives, economy, social, and security, and in particular the environment. It takes international cooperation, and it has to be based on commonly agreed rules. Otherwise, it will not work, if I want to put it in a very, very simple way. And also the fact that the European Union is so close to Canada. I mean, not just institutionally, of course, we have a free trade agreement, we have a strategic partnership agreement, which is very important, but also it reflects how much common ground there is between Canada and the European Union. I think the closer relationship and the meaningful engagement between Canada and the EU could also contribute tremendously to this goal to make sure that, you know, rules-based conduction of international transactions are upheld, you know, be it in security, be it in trade, be it in every aspect of international life.
Thank you so much. So this has been a wonderful discussion so far. With all of that, we are going to bring our moderated discussion to a close and have opened the floor to questions from our live audience. So our first question is about COVID. How do you think that COVID will shape nations and international organizations' ability to conduct diplomacy and tackle global issues such as climate change or future pandemics? And how would you describe the impacts of the pandemic to diplomacy thus far?
Well, I would start with the last segment of this question. It's a challenge. I mean, I cannot deny that for a diplomat, for any diplomat, not being able to meet people, not being able to actually attend events where there are many, many people, it takes away a lot of opportunities. So in that sense, it is a challenge. But of course, we all understand that this is the way it has to be, because we need to join our efforts in order to make sure that we actually make a contribution to creating to end this, to help facilitate the victory over this pandemic, if I can use that term. But it also forced us to come up with some creative diplomacy, and of course this is the living example of that, is be able to meet and discuss issues in using digital technology, just to connect back to one of my other favorite topics, of course, innovation, but also to reach and to make sure that our messages get across in these circumstances. That is a new skill, I would say, that diplomats had to and I would say in many cases successfully actually accomplished, because because we have to discuss issues, we have to exchange views, we have to facilitate cooperation, or even addressing challenges using these digital tools and channels. So in that sense, I mean, it's not like a substitute for of course traditional diplomacy, but it added a new skill, I would say, or asset, and we will have to be very smart how we can use this in the future when we hopefully will be able to go back to traditional ways of conducting business, and there is no substitute for that. But this would add some additional avenue and aspect to our work, which I think in a smart way we should. And the first part of the question, can you read? Sorry, was it? Can you please remind me of the first part of the question?
Oh, well, yes. Just how it will shape nations and international organizations' ability to conduct diplomacy and tackle the global issues.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I hope we will go back to traditional ways also in terms of international organization, but we have to draw the lessons of this pandemic in every sense, not just in our own lives or in our country's ability to address challenges like this, but also as an international organizations or in a wider sense, an international community, because this really brought to the surface certain deficiencies or inabilities in a way that we really need to improve, and I think we already have done a lot and achieved a lot of developments or efforts that would actually enable. I mean, we all speak about strengthening the resilience of countries, but it's so true, not just in healthcare, which is of course essential, and also the effectiveness of the healthcare system, how we should improve that in a way that is also sensible, because obviously it's not just a question of volume, it's not just a question of number of beds and all that, but how to be smart about it, how to create a flexible and efficient system that would enable us, our countries, and that has the international aspects as well, to react in a much more efficient way. It leads back to the previous segments of the discussion, to reduce the time between the crisis occurring and the management actually unfold. And so, sorry, I speak a lot, I know.
No, I mean, everything you said has been very insightful, very detailed, but it does look like that's all that we have time for. Thank you again, Ambassador, for agreeing to have this conversation and for all of your thoughtful responses. With that, I will now pass it on to our President and CEO, Robert Baines, once more for some closing remarks.
Thank you so much. Ambassador, what an absolute pleasure. You don't talk too much. It's that our time is too short. It's our fault, not yours. Chanel and Thea, what a great job you've done. Thank you so much for ushering us through this. Ambassador, do you have time for 2 minutes more?
Absolutely.
Just wanted to ask one big question. If you could talk to the Canadian public directly and just tell them what it is that Hungary could teach Canada about the value of NATO and the importance of security that perhaps most Canadians wouldn't know about. Do you have any insights on that, on perhaps a good way that Canadians could understand security from the Hungarian point of view?
Well, I would say that North America, Canada, the United States, and Europe, whenever we are close and we work together, we are much more successful individually too. So a cohesion and this transatlantic bond that's been there in different era, in different circumstances, it's currently there too, but it's so essential and it's so in our interest to uphold this bond. And for that, we really have to actively contribute. And so it's a little bit like, when you don't have it, that's when you actually realize how important it is. I don't want to make mundane comparisons, but to be aware of the fact that there is it's family, it's a community, a very, very close-knit community of countries that are dedicated to protect each other, to stand up for each other, and to make sure that this family is closely knit and it's strong. And so to realize that and to understand that is very important for the wider public too. It's because it's actually the people that this whole organization is for. It's not just leaders deciding. It's countries, it's nations that actually join together to provide for each other's, of course their own, but each other's security too. And that's the fundamental prerequisite for a peaceful life, but also prosperity and freedom.
All the good stuff. Very, very good. Well, Ambassador Vass-Salazar, it's an absolute pleasure to host you. We can't wait to do it in real life again and to prove your diplomatic skills correct, as you were saying, that is the real way to do diplomacy. We agree wholeheartedly, and we look forward to raising a glass with you at some point in the very near future. Thank you so much for joining us. And for those of you watching, please do continue to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. It was a true pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much.